All right. Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. First of all, I want to let you know that this webinar is recorded, and so we'll be sharing this recording with you after the call. And then second of all, in the chat section there, you can send me any questions that you may have during the webinar, and I'd be happy to address it. If I don't get to them during the webinar, I'll get them to at the end of the webinar after the presentation part. And with that, I'll get started. My name is Hai. I am co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Matrix. My goals today is pretty straightforward. So first, I want to make sure that you get an understanding on the basics of Matrix, and then provide you a framework, how to get the most out of the software, and then help you envision what your work and life success may look like with Matrix. So I've talked to thousands of customers over the years, and one of the things that I think is most important is that we figure out how to make it work for you on an individual basis, because that's the core of all of this. And so hopefully you're here today because you're interested in learning about Matrix. You're interested in learning how to become more effective at prioritizing tasks and emails, and just be able to focus your time on what matters most. And so hopefully, as I'm going through this webinar, in the back of your mind, you're thinking how to apply this to your own work from the get-go, because that's the goal, right? I want you able to walk away from today's webinar being able to execute immediately. One thing I want to highlight is are the challenges that customers face. So one of the things that's really interesting is that one, team members are always having trouble understanding what's priority right now. And when I talk about team members here, I'm talking about groups of people working together to try to fulfill some sort of goal, but yet at the same time, they're having trouble understanding what's priority across the organization. And what I mean by that is when you think about how when you talk to your manager or to your direct reports, do you think everyone's aligned? And the reality is a lot of people struggle with that because there are so many priorities, so many conflicts that happens on a routine basis, and that's completely natural. And then second of all, it is very, very hard to actually keep track on the status of work across so many areas of responsibilities. No longer are we responsible for one thing. I feel like with technology, more so than ever, we're actually responsible for so many projects and tasks and initiatives at the same time. And then finally, emails and meetings are just causing far too much context switching. Despite all these advances in technologies around communication, I find that more often than not, you're actually just switching software. And so then how do you understand what is it that you need to work on? And then you're spending more time looking at where all these tasks are coming from than actually spending time executing on them. So Matrix is intended to solve these challenges. And so what Matrix is a comprehensive email priority and project management software to help teams manage emails, conduct more efficient meetings, and get real-time status updates on critical projects and priorities. We emphasize the word priorities often and a lot because at the core of it, that's what Matrix is designed to do. Help you understand what it is that you need to work on at any point in time. So how does Matrix help with these challenges that I talked about? First, we use something called the 4-quadrant methodology, which I'll go into more details, to help promote effective prioritization. So unlike a traditional task management software where you're talking about list or just timeline or whatever, Matrix uses the quadrants to really hone in on what are the things that are important and urgent. And then Matrix provide additional views such as the one-on-one, the agenda, the timeline, to help you understand what needs to be done within the right context. And when I talk about context, I'm talking about the context of time, the context of priorities, the context of people. And so those are the things that you can think about. Everything in Matrix can be flipped and viewed from different angles and different perspectives to help you understand where you should best focus your efforts. And then Matrix has probably one of the best integrations in Microsoft Teams and Outlook for effective email and task prioritization. Now, you don't need Teams and you don't need Outlook to use our software, but if you do use those applications, then Matrix definitely is immensely impactful in terms of context switching. So what makes Matrix better than competing solution? First, we're the only solution that's Microsoft 365 security certified on our web app, Outlook app, and Teams app at the same time. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is actually we're leveraging AI with a focus on prioritization and goals management to help you get achieve whatever goals is that you want to do. And then we provide what I call people-centric collaboration. And that's, so what that means, it's not just about projects, it's not just about tasks, but if you're thinking about using Priority Matrix beyond yourself, beyond managing just your priorities, Priority Matrix provide you really good visibility on the priorities of your team. And then finally, Priority Matrix is available as a standard SaaS solution, but as also a HIPAA compliant solution for the healthcare and life sciences people, as well as Azure Government Cloud for the state and local governments. So if you're interested in our enterprise solution or some of the other solutions, definitely reach out to us, support@affluence.com, and we'd be happy to walk you through them. So what makes Priority Matrix particularly effective? What it does is actually helps you determine what do you need to work on now, what do you need to work on later, and then what are the things you should perhaps delegate. And then secondly, Priority Matrix helps provide one place where everyone can go to understand what needs to be done. And the reality is priorities are constantly shifting, right? You're working on so many projects, so many things that's happening. People are updating stuff here and there. So what you need is one central place to go to and have an understanding on the status of it all. And Priority Matrix is intended or can be used for exactly that purpose. So let's talk about the fundamental behind Priority Matrix, or the philosophy behind Priority Matrix, rather. There's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." Now, what I really like about this quote is that it splits everything that we have to do into the two dimensions of importance and urgency. So instead of just thinking in terms of a list, right, where you have a list from the top to the bottom, and if you start on that list, you work at the top or you work at the bottom, etc. Instead, take that list of all the things you have to do and split it into the two-dimensional matrix of important and urgent, important and not urgent, important but not important, not urgent, and then not important, not urgent. So if you think about everything you have to do, how do you fit it within that framework? Now, what's really interesting is this exercise is hard, by the way. It is not trivial. It is not easy. And in fact, I would argue that is the reason why Priority Matrix is effective, because it forces you to actually think about higher dimensions than just a list. And so if you're using task management software, you're using To-Do and all these other lists that actually just tracks all the stuff that you have to do, and then you're finding that you're constantly struggling to track what it is that you should work on at any moment, or you're finding that you're working on things that's not delivering the result that you want, this is the core problem. The core problem is we're not looking at in the proper dimension where it is that we need to focus our time. And so what Priority Matrix does is we take everything that you have to do from a task perspective and we split it into those dimensions that I talked about. So on the top left quadrant, you have the things that are due now. That's the important and urgent. These are the things that you should be focusing your effort on it right now at this moment. And typically we would consider these as fires. And if that's all you're spending your time on, then you're just constantly firefighting. So that's not a good thing. And then secondly, on the top right quadrants, that's the important but not urgent. Those are the things you should plan for. What that means is you're in the back of your mind, you should be putting up the effort to determine how you allocate resources, what you should start working on in order to actually meet those goals. And then the stuff on the bottom left, the delegate, those are the things that perhaps someone else can do a better job than you, right? So you can think about that's what your executive assistants, your direct reports, sometimes it's just things that got to be done, but they're not so critical towards your goal. And so it's not easy to terse things out and determine where they fit within this picture, but that's what I encourage you to do. So as you're using Priority Matrix, think carefully about the stuff that you're putting into each of these quadrants. And then finally, the inbox, that's where everything starts. And so what I like to do personally is I like to create stuff in the inbox, and then from there, I determine which of the other quadrants they go into. Sometimes they never make it out of the inbox, and that's perfectly fine, right? It means it's something that may never have to be done. I just want to get out of my head. So as you use Priority Matrix, one of my recommendation to you is do not let quadrant one get overcrowded and overwhelm you. Because if you do, and if everything's important and urgent, then nothing is. And just remember that as a very important part of thinking about prioritization. So within this framework, Priority Matrix creates alignments because it forces you to prioritize from the very beginning. And again, I'm not going to go and downplay it. I think that, imagine how much time you're putting into executing all these tasks and working towards your goal. I would argue that, half the effort the hardest part is actually determining what needs to be worked on and what needs to not be worked on. And so the interesting thing is that success from using Matrix isn't about finding what everyone agrees on. It's about discovering the disagreement on when something should be a priority, but it isn't. And so one of my recommendation for customers is that if you use Matrix, project it on the big screen when you have your important meetings. So then everyone can look at it and say, okay, you know what? I see the priorities. I understand this, within the context of the bigger picture. And then when you have disagreement there, that's where all the magic happens, right? Because you or your manager or other executives may look at it and say, you know what? Actually, we should actually be prioritizing this, or no, we should not be prioritizing this. And so if you're ruthless about it, that's how you know you're going to spend the right time and effort on the right task. As mentioned, the webinars are recorded, and so we'll post it on the website afterwards. And then if you have any questions, reach out to us, support@affluence.com or hi@affluence.com. And then with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the application itself. And like I said, if you have any questions during the webinar, go ahead and send in the chat. And then also for those that are watching this webinar recording, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or us. We'd be happy to address the questions that you may have. The goal here is to help you get a strong understanding of what Matrix is about. So then when you're walking away from this webinar, you can get started right away. And my recommendation is it's not too late to get started, right? And so start jotting down your priorities. So as I'm doing this, please think about your the things that you have to do and start planning it out in Matrix. Now, if you have any questions, just send it in the chat, and then when I get a chance, I will take a look at the chat and read through the questions and then answer. Thank you. All right, I'm going to jump to the product. All right, so now I'm going to open Matrix. And so here I have Matrix open on the web app. And so as mentioned, Matrix is a SaaS solution, but we have the app on iOS, on Android, on Windows, on Mac, as well as through the website. And so if you go to affluence.com and click on web app, that's how you access the web app. Or you can also go to partymatrix.com. And so when you open Matrix, you'll see that front and center is the 4 quadrant, right? So whenever you open a project, every project has the quadrant associated with it. And so as you can see, when I look at this matrix, I can see that this project is called My Team Priorities here. That's the name of the project. And so I can have many, many different projects. Again, every project has its own quadrants associated with it. And down further, within the project itself, there's the 4 quadrants. And here I have quadrant 1 as the fires, the do now, do later, delegate, and inbox. And as you can see, when I started, I just created a couple of tasks here in my inbox. I'm going to do an example task. I'm going to go and say, follow up with webinar participants. And then not only that, instead of actually just typing the task, I'm going to say due tomorrow at 2 p.m. And then I create a task in Matrix. And so what happens is Matrix will go and generate that task. And then now on the right-hand side, this opens up what's called the item details. And this is where you're adding additional information about the task themselves. So for example, again, I have my task name, right? That's the task I created, due tomorrow 2 p.m. And because I said due tomorrow 2 p.m., our system automatically interprets that for me and set the due date for me in my local time. And so when you use Matrix, I highly recommend that you do this. Every item that you create, go ahead and type the due, and then whatever it is, due tomorrow, due next week, due next Tuesday, due in 1 month, etc. When you do that, Matrix will generate those due dates, and when you have due dates, then you get reminders. And the whole goal, again, is for you to work on the right things. And one of the things that's so fascinating is that the reason we get distracted, it's because the non-important but urgent things are the things that are constantly popping up, right? That's the text message that you get. That's the new emails that's coming in that has nothing to do with anything that is relevant. But guess what? You saw the email, so now you're reading it. Or that's why we get so distracted by social media news and so forth, because they're the things that's popping up. And so when you think about that, to gamify the whole thing, and to trick your mind into focusing on the right things, make sure you set the due dates. Make sure you set reminders with Matrix, and that allows you to actually all the tasks that are truly important to surface back up into your alerts in Matrix, and then you can actually focus on them. So keep that in mind as you use Matrix to ensure you use those capabilities. Let's go back to the item details here. So now I have the task. There's a couple things I can do from the item detail perspective. I can star it. What starring does is actually pops it to the top of the list. Again, this is just another way of adding a tag that would go and signify to myself, rather, more so than anybody else, that this is something important. And so when I star something, I actually get a special star report. So then I know that I'm actually working on those tasks. And so if you think about it, if you're working on a lot of different things, a lot of different projects with a lot of different people, starring is a way to actually reduce the amount of noise there is, so then you can focus on the key signals. And then below that, you have add icons. When I click on add icons here, I get a small list of icons that I can choose from. One of the series of icons I really like are these colors. So red, yellow, and green. So if you, let's just say, for example, I'm going to go ahead and choose green here. One thing that's nice about it, and when you see how I selected that and it actually shows up in the quadrant too, one thing that's nice about it is it's visual, right? And so if you have a lot of different things that are behind schedule or something like that, you can change it to red. And then whenever anyone else looks at this matrix, it's so easy to spot the areas that are having problems. And now if you go further down, there's the owner. And so when I created this task in this demo account, I'm the owner. And so my avatar shows up. But if I want to assign it to somebody else, I can click on this and I assign it to another person. And so you see now that person's avatar is replaced as mine, and she's the owner. Now, every task can have only one owner, and that's on purpose because we want to understand exactly who's responsible for it. And then that icon actually shows up here as well. But you see how, despite me changing the owner, I'm still a follower of this task. So when this task is updated, I do get notifications for it. And so I can go and add additional followers if needed. The whole idea here is to add people who are relevant to this task. And that's how we'll look at this data later and determine, okay, what are the things I need to do for somebody, for X person, et cetera. And then next to it, you have progress, 0 to 100%, straightforward. Effort, how much time it takes, is not all tasks are created equal. And then I mentioned the difference between due dates and reminders. Let me explain that a bit more. When I say something is due, let's just say due in 2 weeks, but if it's going to take me a few days to get started and I wait until the due date to get started, I'm going to be far too late. So the whole idea around dates and reminders is, okay, this is due in 2 weeks, but remind me on a weekly basis. Now, let me show you how I like to set reminders. When I have a task that's important, again, I set due date, and then I go down to this chat here and I say, remind me daily. And you see how the text turned green? What's happening is our system, again, uses natural language, and it interprets that. And now it set a reminder for me, due in 1 day, and it's going to send me a daily reminder until I get this done. So again, it's a way to ensure that the most critical things are constantly popping back up into your list. And so I like that a lot. And it's a couple examples of how I like to use it. Let's say I have to follow up with the customer in a year. Just think about it. How would you do that today? If you have to do something in a year, right? So the way I would do it, I would go and set a due date due in 1 year, and then I would set a reminder in 11 months. And so now what would happen is that I can just forget it. And then in a year, magically, this pops up and like, oh, hey, I got to get started, start thinking about it. So then when the due date comes, I can actually do the appropriate things. So keep that in mind. But if we talk about the critical features of Matrix that I think are most impactful, these two are actually the ones that I recommend the most. Due dates, reminders, okay? So when you use Matrix, make sure you put tasks in the appropriate quadrants and then set those two parameters. Down further, you have the chat section. And so this is where you can actually have conversation with other people who's in this task. It also serves as a history, a record of all the changes. Very, very important over time. You have the notes section. It's not intended to be rich text. That's what your Google Docs and your Microsoft Word is for. But this is where you can add some information around the task. You can also create subtasks as needed. And then finally, you have the resources section. This is where you can attach files, links, documents, etc. And you can actually link Party Matrix tasks together to create dependencies all from here. So that's what item details is. And so whenever you create a task, you have the item details. But as you can see, I can actually even ignore the vast majority of the things in the item details. If I'm new to Party Matrix, the way I would focus my time is I would just create tasks in the matrix itself. I set the due date here. And then with that, I just focus all my time on prioritizing the task and then not worry too much yet around the item details. But for those who want to be are power users or want to really get the most out of Matrix, this is where you add all those extra details. Now let's go back to the quadrants themselves. As you can see, I have the task created here in the inbox. I could have created in any of these quadrants, but now I can go and I can just drag and drop. And so what's really nice about that is I can reprioritize very easily. And as you can see, look how visual this is. I can immediately, when I start my day, I look at this and I know exactly where I need to focus my time, right? This is my goal. I'm going to get this done today. The second thing you can do is you can actually resize the quadrant too. So then if you really want to focus on quadrant 1, you just do this. And now all the tasks that you have in quadrant 1 is just so much more prominent as well. The other thing you can do with Matrix is actually you can look at all this information from a different view. So here at the very top, I have the matrix view, but I can actually switch over to the list view. I know we're not supposed to put in lists, but then if you sometimes you go to the list view, and what I like about the list view is it's very good at helping me sort things by due dates. And so here, thinking about the dimensions of urgency, whenever items are overdue, they turn red. And so it's very, very visual. And then not only that, I can sort by each of these columns. I can sort by the quadrants, the icons, I can sort by the owner, the item name, etc. So the list view has its purpose. And of course, you can still create tasks from here. One thing I want to mention is that with all of this, you actually have the option to click on filter. When you choose filter, Party Matrix provide extremely powerful ways for you to dive into the data. And so I won't go into the details, but if you need to see finished tasks that were done last month, or you need to see who's assigned to what, that's what the filters is for. And so the filters apply to all these different views. And so it really helps you generate a report on what it is that you need. Sometimes it just boils down to, hey, it's my quarterly review. I need to generate a report to my manager to show them all the things I have to do. Guess what? You go to the filter, change the date, and then change to finished task. And then now you have a report that you can actually show your manager and say, hey, by the way, these are all the things that I did. Very easy to meet your performance goals if you use Matrix that way. And then you have the calendar view. And so again, tasks that do have due dates show up here. What's nice about this is, again, you can sort of plan your week within the perspective, within the context of this project. And then if I have a task, I can actually just drag and drop to reprioritize them. And so you see how what's neat is that in Matrix, I can actually select the task and the item details will update. And then not only that, there's a record of all the changes. And so when I change that due date, Matrix tracks that for me. It is so helpful because, you know, if my coworker starts moving things around and I'm like, hey, wait a minute, I thought we set the due date for, you know, so-and-so date. Why did it change? Well, Matrix gives you that record. It is very useful if you're trying to have a full understanding and keep everyone aligned. And then next to that, you have the Gantt chart view. And so if you don't need to use Gantt chart, it still gives you a very good perspective on timeline. It's useful if you need to look across much larger time span than just a month or a week. And then if you do set dependencies between tasks, then you'll see the dependencies, links, and so forth here, and you can print that as a Gantt chart. So these are the different views you have in Matrix. Now let me show you how you can customize a matrix. One thing that's really interesting is there's nothing that prevents you from using Matrix as a different in a different way, in a different format than that Eisenhower matrix. And so we realized this early on. So that's why we give you this option. If you go up back to the top of the matrix view, you click on edit project. Here you open what's called the project details. The project details has the project name. Again, I can star the project. And as you can see, when I star the project, it pops to the top of my list. On my left-hand side here in my list of project, the star project popped to the top of my list, right? So in my real work account, I have something like 300 projects. And so as you can imagine, 300 projects, I don't have time to go through each of them. So I star the ones that are important to me. And then they always are at the top of the list. And so I can actually jump to those and then always know exactly what tasks are important. And not only that, the rest of the projects are actually sorted by when they're updated. And so if you have projects that no one touched, well, it would be way at the bottom. And then if someone starts modifying the projects and changing dates or adding tasks and so forth, it'll pop up to the very top. So now let's go back to the project details. So I have my project name, I have the star, I have the members associated with it. And so again, I can add additional people to my project. And so when you create a project first, maybe it's just yourself, right? And so no one else sees that project. But then afterwards you say, okay, you know what? I want my manager to see this. Then you add your manager to the project and now they can see your matrix. And then vice versa. If you're managing a team, you want the whole team to be on the same page with respect to your team priorities. Well, you create a project called Team Priorities and you invite all your coworkers into one view, and now everyone can share this and have a really, really good discussion around what's important and what's not. One thing I'd like to say as well is that Party Matrix provide what's called asynchronous updates. And so what I mean by that is this. Imagine if you didn't have any software like Party Matrix. In order to understand the priorities across your team, what do you have to do? You have to have meetings. And you have to sit down together at the same time and then talk about everything. And that is such a waste of time. And it's even harder when you're working with people who are remote, right? You're not sitting in the same office. They might be in a different location, but even a different time zone. And now it's extremely difficult to be on top of everything. Instead, with something like Party Matrix, anyone can go and update their priorities at their convenience. And then for you, you just go into this matrix, you look at it, and it's like, okay, I see everyone's priorities at any point in time. And I have a full history of everything that's been changed. And so that is what I mean by asynchronous. You can do it at your leisure. And it's so much more effective because priorities can get updated overnight. You wake up in the morning, you look at your matrix, and you know exactly what's going on. So think about the members as the people who can go see everything in this project and can modify this project. Above it, you saw this user group. This is a way to set up departments and so forth. So then, all your salespeople, all your marketing people, engineering can actually have user groups associated with it. Down here with the quadrants, what's neat is that we have default names for the quadrant, but you can customize it. And so as you can see here, I changed the do now and I add the word fires to it. But let's say as you use Party Matrix, you want, instead of using the delegate, you want to call this files or documents or resources or something like that, right? So you can think of how you can actually get rid of redundant quadrant names in Party Matrix and use it in a way that reflects how your organization thinks. And then not only that, I can change the color as well. So, sometimes what happens with colors, it's not so obvious, but if you use the right colors within your organization, it's a good way to organize information. And so, for example, maybe everything related to accounting is some color, everything related to engineering is another color, or everything related to a certain customer is one color. And so color just provides this additional layer of visuals. Now, the colors don't change anything in Party Matrix aside from the fact that you can easily glance at it and see what kind of project it is. So every quadrant can be customized. Every quadrant colors can be customized. So these are some of the basic things within the project themselves. Now, let me show you something that's really neat. Let's just say that you create a project and it is a client onboarding project. And what I mean by a client onboarding project is whenever you bring on a client, you have to do 15 things for them. You have to collect their information. You have to go and build some sort of report. And so something is due today, something is due in a week, something is due in a month. What's really neat about that is if you have to create this over and over again, Party Matrix lets you build templates. And so let's just say that you spend some time creating a project called a client template. From that client template, you create the task and you set the due date. Then you go to the project details, click on this ellipsis, and choose Save Project as Template. When you do that, Party Matrix allows you to generate a new project from that template. It captures all the information that you have, the quadrant names, the item names, the due dates. All you have to do is set the new due date, and then everything else will get created for you. It is immensely helpful as a time saver. And what's neat about it too is that the priorities are all aligned, right? And so when you have a new client, you don't have to worry about creating all the different things and worrying about what are the things I need to work on today and tomorrow and so forth. All the tasks are created for you. And not only that, your coworker can have access to the same template too, making it so much easier for everyone to share their knowledge together. And so as you can see, when you click on these menus, there's a lot more options. I'm not going to go into details for those, but as you use Party Matrix more, you can explore that. You don't need most of these when you get started initially, right? All you have to do is go in here to the member section, invite the appropriate members, just make sure you create a project name that makes sense. And so I recommend that you have a project that's like my team priorities. I recommend that you have a project that's my personal priorities. And I also recommend one that's on initiatives, right? So for example, if you have a major initiative or something that you are working on, a personal goal even, and we go create a project for that so that you can capture that task. So that's how a matrix works. And that you saw the item details, you saw the project details. Let me show you how to create projects. As mentioned, I have something like 300 projects. So I'm very good at creating projects. So to create a project, you go to the project list. And if you click on the project list, I have a couple of options. I can jump to some of my projects. I can show all my projects. And I can also choose create project. So I'll go show all my projects. And so you see, when I go to show all my project, this is the list of projects I have in this demo account. There's a couple of things that's useful here. There's a filter section. Again, you can use filter as a way to organize the information you have within your projects. If you have 1 or 2 projects, this is not that useful, obviously. But if you have 100, guess what? Matrix allows you to actually find project based on user group. Like I said, engineering, marketing, sales. You can sort project by tags. And so and all that. But to add a project, you click on Add Project. Now, when I click on Add Project, I get to this view. So now there's a couple of options that I have. The most obvious one is a blank project. So if I want to create a blank project, I click on blank project. I just type in my project name, right? So my personal priorities or my initiative for this quarter, etc. And then from there, I can just choose what quadrant colors it is and click Add Project. Very, very straightforward. Now I'm going to click back and I'm going to show you some of the other options you have. You have the option to create a project from public templates. These are templates that we've created and we share with you for free that you can just choose from one of these. And then, for example, if you're a manager, you want to create a 30, 60, 90-day plan. Well, very straightforward. You just choose that option. And so what it does is just rename the quadrants for you. In some cases, we actually generate some tasks for you too. But that's how you can choose one of our templates. If you click on it, you get a little bit more details. In fact, we have hundreds of templates that you can choose from on our website. But these are some public templates that's available. And then you can also choose my templates. Well, as I mentioned earlier, once you create a project, you can actually save that project as a template. When you do, it shows up right here. So that could be employee onboarding. That could be client onboarding. That could be an engineering process of some kind that you're doing over and over again. So anything that's repetitive, it's perfect to create a my template, a custom template for yourself and your organization. And the last option that you have is create with AI. And this is a really neat thing that we've done recently. All it does is it takes a goal that you have and then generate a bunch of tasks for you. So for example, if you look at this, we actually have a couple of projects for you here that you can choose from, but literally type in your goal, get a promotion, or get a raise, or negotiate something, etc. So I'll let you play with that. But if you get a chance, go create a project, choose an AI project, type in a goal, and see what our system spits out. We're constantly improving it. And so if you have feedback, share that with us. Especially, actually, I had a feedback from a customer that says, hey, the output was terrible. Like I had nothing that I needed, which is perfectly reasonable. And so in that case, what we want to figure out is, what is it about the goals that the customer has that our system didn't do a good job of? But at the same time, we had other customers who actually got extremely good ideas and suggestions by our AI on the things they need to do. So I do implore you to try it out and then give us feedback, because that's how we can improve all this together. So that's how you create a project. Now let's go back into Matrix, and I'm going to switch gear a little bit. I'm going to talk about email management. In fact, a lot of customers come to Matrix because they struggle with email. So let me open my Outlook here on the web. Now, if you have Outlook, definitely install the Matrix for Outlook extension, which works on your Outlook for web, Outlook for desktop, for Mac, for Windows, for iOS, etc. And when you install Matrix for Outlook, what it does is it gives you, let me see, I'll show you how it looks. So when the App Store, to install Matrix, by the way, you click on the App Store, search for Matrix, and then by clicking this Add Apps, and then when you have Matrix installed, it shows up right here. And so you can see I can click on Matrix, and I can choose Prioritize Email. Now, on a daily basis, I get a couple hundred emails per day. So for me, I'm not able to answer all of them, obviously, but I try my best to prioritize the ones that I can't get to right away, right? Sometimes some emails are easy and you just respond to it and get it done, right? That's the getting things done methodology. But some emails requires a lot more work. And in fact, I might have to delegate to somebody else. And so what happens with Matrix is that it allows me to turn any email into a task. And so when I click on that Matrix extension in Outlook and choose prioritize email, this right panel opens up in Outlook. And as you can see, what it allows me to do front and center is capture the email. All that means is turns this email into a task. And the reason why I turn an email into a task is then I can set due dates, I can set reminders, I can delegate, and so on. And so what happens is the email subject become the name of the item, and then I can go and change it as needed, right? Because maybe instead of saying monthly or whatever the subject is, I can actually, again, type my due dates in here, or I can type some other information to give me context. In fact, I was talking to the customer where what happens is they just get a lot of client emails. And so from those client emails, they need to go and prioritize the task so then they can make sure that they respond to the customer. And guess what? Flagging is great if you have 5 flag emails, but flagging is not so great if you have 100 flag emails or hundreds of flag emails that's accumulated over time. And so that's not sufficient. You're going to drop important emails. So the way it works with Matrix is then instead of actually just flagging, I choose the project it goes in, I choose what quadrant it goes in, okay? So I'll go ahead and choose quadrant 3 here. And then in fact, I can assign to somebody as well. So what's really neat about this is instead of just thinking of an email as something that I have to respond to, maybe I need inputs from other team members. And instead of forwarding to them, which then creates a whole mess of more forwarded emails and everyone's confused within the context of what's going on, instead, you assign it to them in Matrix. Now, when they go into the Matrix, they'll see it. They can respond to it in Matrix. They can set due dates. And now you have a conversation around that email. So I'm going to go ahead and choose another person. I can choose a due date. So now the person knows when to take a look at this email, or it'll pop up in their reminders. And then I click capture email. And as you can see, the moment I did that, the right-hand panel replaces with my item details. Everything I see here should be familiar to you from the item details I showed initially. I have the item name, I can star it, I see the owner, I see the due dates because I set it, and I have a chat section, and guess what? I go back into my Matrix and it should be there. Now, what's really neat too, what makes Matrix unique is that one, it uploads that email here into Matrix. So what's nice about this is Eugenia, my coworker who I signed this to, can open on her email. And so she doesn't have access to my email because somebody sent me the email, but by creating a task with Matrix and assign to somebody, that person can now open that as well and respond to that email if needed. And not only that, Matrix is also unique in letting you do another thing, which is attaching a task to attaching email to an existing task. So instead of choosing prioritize email, I'm going to open Matrix, and actually when I do that, you see how my Matrix action item shows up here. I can search for the appropriate item and then hover over the task and attach. And that's it. So now I can actually organize all my emails into one central place. So useful, especially if you have somebody who's sending you multiple emails and it's all related to one task, and there's multiple people on your side who's working on this task. By attaching to an existing task, everyone has the same context and know exactly what it is that they need to work on. So I highly recommend that. Now, Matrix also works with, we also have a Gmail extension. It's not as powerful as our Outlook extension, but it does help you capture email. Matrix also has an inbox address. So what's really neat is that if I go back to my Matrix here, you see how that email that I created as a task shows up here, assigned to the right person, and then the email is associated here and the due date is generated. But now what I can also do is I can go to my inbox, and Matrix has what's called the secret inbox address. And so you might have seen this with a couple of other apps, which is you can copy an email address from Matrix, save it as a contact, and when you get an email, you can forward it into the secret inbox, and they'll show up in your Matrix, and then you can organize it later. I use this quite often on my phone, especially when I'm out and about and I see an email and I have, I see it on Apple Mail, for example. I can't go and prioritize that easily. I forward it into my Party Matrix, and then in the body, I just say, due tomorrow, and then remind me daily. And now guess what? It pops up into my Party Matrix, and I get a reminder. And so I don't drop important emails for that reason, especially things that are farther out. I'm not going to get to it today. I'm going to get to it in a few weeks or something like that. So that's what extremely useful. So check out that secret inbox. The way that my approach here is you copy the inbox address, save it as a contact on your phone. You can call it, inbox Party Matrix or something like that. So that's a pretty neat feature. What's nice about that is it works with everything. So if you don't use Outlook, you use Gmail, or you use any email program. In fact, you can save that inbox, and now you can generate any task from anywhere. And by the way, every project and every quadrant in Party Matrix has an email address. So that's even more powerful, because here I'm sending to my inbox, but imagine if actually I know exactly where it needs to go, right? I can actually generate all those rules in your email program and automatically create tasks from Party Matrix. I'm going to switch here again and jump to Microsoft Teams to show you some of the capabilities I think is pretty cool. If you use Microsoft Teams, go to the App Store here, install Party Matrix, and then afterwards you'll see Party Matrix here on the left-hand side. You right-click and you choose Pin. And as you can see, once I pin Party Matrix, I open it, it looks exactly like the web app. And now I have the full Party Matrix SaaS application inside Teams. I don't even have to switch contexts. I don't even have to go to partymatrix.com. I see everything I have here. The only difference is some of the menu items move. And so it's either hidden in here or it's up here, right? So you still have the quadrant list. You still have the ability to switch to the home view where you get all your alerts and so forth. So I won't go into the details here, but as you open this, you'll see exactly what you have to do. I really like our integration inside Teams because it works so well, and I don't have to open more applications. I already have enough applications and tabs open that I don't need more. So I like that for that reason. Now, there's a couple of things that we do inside Teams that's really unique. One, when I have a conversation with somebody, let's say my direct report, I can actually go to the one-on-one. So the one-on-one is Party Matrix view to help me see everything my direct report is working on. When I open this view, look at this here. I see everything that Eugenia is working on, right? Across all of Priority Matrix, every single project, everything that I worked with her on shows up here in this list. I don't even have to open Party Matrix. I don't have to go through every single project. I just go to this view and I see everything. Whenever I struggle to find something for that I assigned to somebody, this is where I would go. I would go to the one-on-one view, select the person, and then I can actually just search for that task directly from here, right? I can combine with filters. I can find anything I need. But the other neat thing is how quickly and easy it is for me to create shared tasks. I can actually click on Add Share Task, and when I do, and I say, hey, could you do XYZ? It assigns it to the person and adds me as a follower. Again, I want to mention why you want to be a follower. So then when that task gets updated, you get notified. And so if you're a manager and you're delegating a lot of tasks, this thing is a major time saver. And then not only that, I really like this place for you to have meetings. And so when you have your one-on-one meeting with your manager or your direct reports, open up Party Matrix, go to the one-on-one view, and then as you're talking about different things, create the task directly. So many times I've heard, customers complain about how they have a meeting, they came up with a bunch of ideas on things to do, and then 2 weeks later they have a follow-up and none of those things were written down, right? And so Party Matrix skips that for you by making it so easy to create tasks directly from here. So definitely explore this feature because I think it's awesome. And so to get to that one-on-one view, you click on this plus, and then you choose Party Matrix, and then choose one-on-one. And as you can see, I can do a couple of other things embedding into Party Matrix for Microsoft Teams. A couple of other things that's really useful. In Party Matrix, inside Teams, you can actually send Party Matrix tasks too. So if you click on this ellipsis down here, choose Party Matrix, and you can send a task to anybody. And then not only that, if I'm talking to somebody inside Teams, I can actually just hover over that conversation, click on the ellipsis, and create a Party Matrix task directly from any Teams conversation. And so you can imagine how this is a time saver because what we've just eliminated is that context switching problem that I mentioned earlier, how you have to go to another application, find a project, create a task, assign to somebody. Party Matrix skips all of those and allow you to work from wherever it is that you are at this moment in time. So we have additional integrations that I'm not showing here. For example, the chat bot will give you notifications on when things are due and so forth. And then I want to show you something that's really, really neat. So a few days ago or last week, the Microsoft CEO presented about Copilot for Microsoft Teams. And on if you saw, but we're one of the logos there. And so we're super excited about that. But if you go to Copilot, Priority Matrix is one of the very few software that works with Copilot, and we're one of the very few that Microsoft 365 Security certified. So if you're at a big organization or just an organization in general that's looking for ways to become more effective at everything, well, Priority Matrix works with Copilot. So this is our AI integrated directly into the Microsoft Teams AI, allowing you to do so many cool things. So I'm not going to walk into talk about the details there, but if you're looking at a potential enterprise solution and really interested in this, ask your IT to reach out to us and we'd be happy to show you what it's capable of. But you can just think about how all the time savings it would create. So we're super excited about that capability. Now, with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up and jump back to my presentation. And then from there, after that, I'll take a look to see if there's any questions that you have. So if you have any questions, go ahead and send it in the chat right now in the webinar. And then I'd be happy to take a look at it. So I'm going to jump back to my presentation real quick. So to wrap things up, it's up to you to use Priority Matrix and actually to get started. And I recommend getting started right away. There's almost no reason not to. I mean, if anything, what Priority Matrix does is just a place for you to jot down the things that you care about, right? What are your goals? What are the priorities, the tasks that you have? And then start organizing into the quadrants. If you do use Teams and Outlook, definitely install our applications. They're not required to use Priority Matrix. You can use our web app, an iOS app, desktop app, and all that. And then I recommend creating at least 3 projects: your personal priorities, your share team priorities, and your key initiative. And then invite the appropriate team members and pitch to them on why it's important to focus on high impact tasks. I emphasize that is because what happens is Priority Matrix helps you as an individual understand your priorities, but think about how valuable it is when you're able to show your priority list to other people, and then vice versa. Imagine walking around the office and understanding exactly what everyone's priorities are. That's the magic of Priority Matrix, right? So you can be aligned and have one central place to understand what needs to be done. And then whenever you find that disagreement, that's the magic. Focus on that. And then create items with due dates and reminders, as I mentioned, and don't drop them. Make sure you mark them as done. If the reminders show up, mark them as done. If you pass the due date, change the due dates, etc. And then I say ruthlessly prioritize, because if you don't do the prioritization, somebody else will, right? So if you can do it, you're in charge. And so that's what I want to emphasize as a key takeaway. So some advice, I recommend using Priority Matrix to track high impact tasks. If you're getting overwhelmed with the number of small things that you have to do, don't write them all down. Just forget about them, right? Imagine how many things you can drop if you actually just ignore them. That's may not be good or bad advice, but if you use Priority Matrix to track the high impact tasks, that will give you the highest value. And then think of Priority Matrix as a communication tool that helps everyone be aligned. And it is so crucial to create that alignment within your team. Priority Matrix works well for individuals, but works great for teams and organization. And then use Priority Matrix to help you meet your goals. Because if we can help you be successful at whatever it is that you do, everything else will just fall in place. So what success with Priority Matrix should look like: you have one central place to track all your priorities. Everyone on the team understands and are aligned on key tasks. Repetitive procedures are templatized to save time and effort. And then important emails are prioritized and triage to the proper team members and never get forgotten. So one thing I really like, I've seen customers do this, and it's so powerful, is project Priority Matrix on the big screen. If you have meetings where you're all sitting together and you're plugging your laptop into a projector and you can show Priority Matrix on the big screen, everyone will look at it and say, okay, you know what? I'm on the same page as you. Or no, I'm not on the same page as you. It is so helpful. And with that, I conclude my presentation here. So I'm going to take a look to see if there are any questions. Okay, so I see a question on what happens. How do I sign in if I'm invited? Do I make my own password? So all you have to do is, if you're invited, simply go to Priority Matrix. So for example, you go to affluence.com, click sign in, and then sign in with your SSO. So if you have Microsoft Teams or Microsoft, sign in with your Microsoft account. If you have Google, sign in with your Google account. If you don't have either, that's when you would create a password. And so you can choose to reset your password, and the Matrix will send you an email for you to reset your password. But we highly recommend using our single sign-on, which is the Microsoft Azure Active Directory or Google. For enterprise customers, we have other options, but those are the two that works out of the box. And then otherwise, you can generate your own password. So again, I recommend SSO just because it's so much easier to deal with. How do I get the create project with AI option? So let me show you how to get to that again. So when you're inside, let me show you inside Microsoft Teams here. Inside Microsoft Teams, I open Party Matrix. I go to my project list. I choose create project. And then from here, there's an option create with AI. So you should be able to see this when you're creating a project on the desktop inside the web app or inside the Teams app. And then from here, that's where you type your goals and then press next to actually generate the AI project. Now, after you press next, it'll take a few minutes for the project to get generated. And then go ahead, after you press it, you can proceed with doing your work in Party Matrix. When the project is created and it's done, Party Matrix will send a pop-up that says your project has been generated. Click here to view it. And that's how you see it. I see that you're saying that you don't see that option. Go ahead and send us an email with a screenshot. So just to make sure that you have the right permission and so forth. So send an email to support@affluence.com with a screenshot of your application so we can see why you don't see that option. But this should be standard for everybody, this create with AI option. Again, make sure that if you don't see it on your desktop, go to the web app, which is affluence.com. So I'll show you how to do that. So you go to affluence.com and then you click on web app, you get to this page, and from here you can try to create your project. So good question around concerning capabilities of participants to alter project. Is there safeguards to prevent accidental changes? So with Party Matrix, there's a couple of options. Now, when you have a project and then you invite someone as a member to that project, everyone has full access and can edit it. So there is no option to go and say that, this person can only edit this quadrant of this task. That's how it works with permissions. There's a couple things. One, Party Matrix gives you that full visibility of all the changes, but two, every task has version control as well. So if you made the wrong changes and someone inadvertently did something where it wasn't correct, you can actually do version control and actually flip back to a previous version of every single task. And then not only that, if you go to the feed section here, there's another view, but this shows all the changes made by people in this project. And so if someone made a change and you're curious to see what the change was, this just provides you a full history on the project level. But again, you saw how every single task has a view as well. Now, the second thing you can do is actually share Party Matrix and read only if you want them to only be able to see the task without being able to edit it. So if you go to this option here, actually, if I go to my project details, I click on this edit project, my project details, I click on this ellipsis, and I can get a share project in read-only mode. So this allows me to share a project with somebody in read-only mode, then they can't edit it, they can only look at the item details. Now, inside Microsoft Teams, you can do that as well. So if you go to a channel, for example, imagine you go to a channel, you can actually click on plus, and then you can choose Party Matrix, and then you can choose a full project view. And when you share a Party Matrix project here, you have the option to share that project in read-only mode. So now someone who's in your team's organization can actually open up the Party Matrix tab inside your channel and see a project, but only in read-only mode. An example of this might be, let's say you have a project, again, let's say under your marketing team or something like that, or announcements for your organization, or quarterly goals, right? And you don't want anyone else able to edit it. You go and you add that quarterly goals as a project inside a Teams channel. Now everyone can open that and see the project, but they can't edit it. And so that's how permissions work. So the next question is, what email address do we email when creating a task through Outlook? That's a fantastic question. So remember, in Outlook, you have the option to install Party Matrix add-in. So if you have that option and you can install the add-in, that's probably your best option. But if you want the email address, here's how you get it. Let's just say inside Microsoft Teams, I'll show you that here. You go to your inbox, and then you see this option here. I click on inbox, and this is where I get my secret inbox address. So this is my inbox address that I can copy as an email address. If I click on this, it'll give me the option to copy that email address, and that's the email that you would send to. And so from there, whenever you send an email to that address, it'll create a task here inside Matrix. It takes maybe a minute or so, but it'll show up here. Now, if you want the email address for every single project, you see how I can select a project and I go to a project details, then I click on this ellipsis and I choose get secret email address. So every project in Matrix has a secret email address. In fact, you could even assign a task to somebody as well, all from an email address. So it's really, really powerful way to actually assign tasks. Next question is, can you remove any participants? Yes, correct. So as a project admin, you have the ability, if you create the project, you can actually be, you can invite people, but then you can also right click on here and then you can actually remove people as well. So you can edit project and then you can remove people from this project. And so as you can see, you're the admin here. So as an admin, you're able to have the permissions to do that. So yes, you're able to add people to a project and you're able to remove them. And when you remove them from a project, it removes them access to the whole project. Couple things, you can actually assign tasks to somebody who's not in a matrix as well. So that's a use case that's sometimes very helpful, because let's just say you have a project, you don't want everyone, you don't want someone to see all the tasks. So you can actually assign to somebody who's not in the project. As you can see, for example, this person I selected here is not in my project, but they can still get the task. What happens is, if they don't have access to the project, it'll show up in their inbox. And so you can think of inbox as the catch-all for tasks that do not belong in a project yet. And so that's why you have the email address. When you send an email into Matrix, it starts in that inbox. And then from there, you can move it to the appropriate projects. So I'll show you how that works. For example, if I go to if I go to inbox here, I select a project, I select a task, then I hover over this project right here and just choose to move to another project. And so that's how I can just reorganize information as needed. Sometimes for me personally, when I forward an email into Matrix, sometimes I don't need it in any particular project. I just forward into Matrix, so I have a place to capture, so then I remember to address it. And so my inbox does get pretty big, but that's totally okay, because I have due dates on them, so I can see and I can clean that up once in a while. The one thing I didn't mention was the home view. And so if you click on the home view, this is where all your alerts show up, by the way. So all those due dates and alerts and that we talked about, like reminders, it shows up here as your alert. And so this is your attention needed, right? So if there's a number here, it means that there's tasks that requires your attention. So you can go through it, you can click through it and get down to everything that requires your attention. You can also clear the notifications as well from up here. But in Matrix, there's other views. As you can see, once you're in the home view, you have your agenda view, which shows you the tasks that you have for this week, for today, etc. Fantastic. So if there's any additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, hi@affluence.com. I'd be happy to answer you, or support@affluence.com if you have more generic questions and so forth. I hope that this webinar was helpful. I hope that you walk away with some understanding of how to use Matrix to prioritize your task and emails and so forth. And that's all there is to it. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.